Welcome to this experiment of mine, along with my dear friend and mentor Hemant Kenkre. We have known each other for many years, but this is the first for both of us. We are going on Facebook and other platforms with a conversation on cricket, and we hope that you will like what is going to unfold. Thank you very much for being here. I go back to 1971, my birthday, 10th of March, and the Indian cricket team gifted me a most amazing birthday present. It was a victory over the West Indies, something that had not happened before, something that many had not visualized when the team was picked for the West Indies. But hey, who's going to complain? What a birthday gift it was. I was 10 years old. What were you doing in 71 and what impact did that win have on you?
Thank you first for sort of having me here, and it's great to be on this platform. And I hope people enjoy our conversation. It's just going to be free flowing and without any censorship, if I may put it that way. Going back to your question, I was about 12 years old then, just about to complete 13, and that 13 happened after India had won. So, so I was in school playing a bit of cricket. I was being coached by the legendary Venu Mankad, and we were very fortunate that a lot of cricketers, India and state cricketers, used to come to the nets that Vinubhai organized at the Hindu Gymkhana in Bombay. So I was a school cricketer, and my cousin happened to be selected for the team in the Indian team for the first time. I'm talking about Sunil Gavaskar, senior, my elder cousin, and I was very fortunate that sort of I could actually go there and see the Indian team practice, before they left for the Caribbean. So it was a great experience to watch all the cricketers whom we had not seen. People like ML Jaisima, for example, a lot of cricketers. I mean, Govindraj, Gundappa Vishwanath, whom I saw for the first time there, later on turned out to be my brother-in-law. To watch all these people was an amazing thing. And this was at the Brabant Stadium, Cricket Club of India, which later on I started playing for many years later, and also captained that team. And it was great. There was no 1K day stadium in those days. And the closest they came was in 48, when Rusi Modi, the middle order Bombay batsman, almost took India to a victory. And unfortunately, the umpires called it a day with a couple of minutes to go. Had Rusi Modi still had the team been batting, Shute Banerjee, Rusi Modi, who was batting at that time, we could have had our first victory on Indian soil. So India had never beaten the West Indies, either in India or the West Indies, and beating a team led by the one and only Gary Sobers, with people like Rohan Kanai in the team, Clive Lloyd, who showed his magic in '66, and I watched that game at the Brabant Stadium. He scored 80 odd runs on his debut. Was an amazing experience. It actually gave a lot of cricketers a lot of belief. This was obviously much before what happened a couple of months later in England, and of course much before '83 and '86. So I think it was an amazing experience for young cricketers like us.
There were a lot of Bombay cricketers, and for us it will be Bombay because 1971 it was still Bombay. Number of cricketers, Sunil Gavaskar, Ashok Mankar, Dilip Sardesai, Eknath Solkar, Ajit Wadekar, of course, the captain of the team.
Yes.
But there are so many of them. You must have grown up watching a number of them play cricket at whatever level. Ranji Trophy definitely, and maybe some rest of India Irani Cup games. But for me, 71 was a milestone because beating West Indies and then going on to beat England again as an Indian team, even though the Nawab of Pataudi had got the Indian team together in '64, brought English as the common language, had beaten New Zealand in New Zealand. I think 71 is a very, very special milestone in Indian cricket history.
Absolutely, and it's very, very similar to what happened much, much later, many years later, when it was Mahendra Singh Dhoni who picked up the mace of the World Championship, the #1 Test team, and the hard work was done by the others like Anil Kumble, for example, or Rahul Dravid, or even for that matter, Saurav Ganguly. So I think it was at the end of the day. I think the story that when Ajit Wadekar was picked as the captain, Vijay Merchant had asked him whom he would like to consider going on the tour, and the first name that he mentioned was that of Nawab Pataudi, Tiger Pataudi. Apart from, of course, ML Jaisima and Salim Durrani and Dilip Sardesai. And I had a word with Wadekar sir many years later, and I asked him the story, and he said that he and Pat were very good friends, and he actually called Pat, or rather Tiger, to ask him if he would be considered coming on the tour. And unfortunately, the Nawab of Pataudi said no, because he was going to be busy with the elections, which were going to be held in India at that point in time. So it would have been great to see Tiger part of that 15 or 16 that eventually went to the West Indies. But as luck would have, as history has it he didn't make that tour. But of course, there was another gentleman representing Hyderabad who also was a very stylish cricketer, a human being, and a fantastic person. And Raj, you and I knew him very well. Motangali Jaisima, who also was probably played the part that Ajit would have expected Tiger to play, that of a confidant and of a strategist. So I think it was fantastic the way things turned out at the end of the day.
Hemant, both of us are not numbers people, but I think the number 774 sticks to the mind. There are some numbers which stick to the mind. There is a 212 that Dilip Sardesai made. 774 obviously is Sunil Gavaskar's total on the tour. He played just 4 test matches, not all 5. Could not play the first test match.
Yeah.
Jayanti Lal got his only test match there. And then besides 774 and 212, there was also Eknath Solkar, who played some very crucial innings, and obviously some fine bowling by Venkatraghavan throughout the tour. Abid Ali playing a little part there.
Prasanna,
Bishan Singh Bedi. I think this team settled in very nicely and performed to its potential to surprise the West Indies. Perhaps West Indies was on the way down a little bit with some of the greats not playing. But do you remember there were stories then that India had not actually beaten the best West Indies side, so it was no big deal that Ajit Wadekar and his men had beaten the West Indies?
Yeah, I mean, see, the sad part is that, a lot of people at that point in time ended up calling Ajit Wadekar a lucky captain, which was really sad because, Ajit was a tactician and, somebody who led his state, city team, Bombay is a state come city, and of course led, West Zone, and, and everybody knew how good he was at the end of the day. I mean, it doesn't matter whether I'm from Bombay or whether I was from Bombay. It really doesn't matter. It was sad that unfortunately, of course, it would have been great if Tiger would have been around. But he wasn't, and people have never accepted the fact that, sort of people, there were all kinds of theories going on that, the West Indies are down and out. And, I mean, look at it the other way, beating a team like that abroad, if you consider people like a Gary Sobers, Sir Garfield Sobers, you consider the maestro, Rohan Kanai, people like, sort of Van Holder, Uton Dove. Uton Dove, of course, was a youngster, Grayson Shillingford. There was Fredericks who played that. There was Charlie Davis. They were a good team. I mean, it's really unfortunate that the way that people had, sort of unfortunately portrayed it as, he was a lucky captain, which is really sad because he ended up doing exactly the same thing a couple of months later in England, playing against a team which had beaten Australia, and Australia won the Ashes, beat New Zealand, beat Gary Sobers' West Indies. So, I mean, I don't understand this whole lucky captain concept. I think it's just a figment of some journalist's imagination, and I don't want to name them. It's sad. But, the end of the day, I don't think Ajit Wadekar ever did mind that. Typically, whoever knew Ajit Wadekar, and I'll try and imitate him, I can't, he would have said, it's unfortunate, Hemant. The people, they don't really know what happened. So, we won, I mean, we won the tournament. So, what are you, that's how Ajit treated it, and he just forgot about it. And to date, whenever I met him until he passed away, he never had a sense of remorse or regret, even after the unfortunate 74 of England. I mean, he was always smiling. He always gave positivity, which eventually helped him when he became the manager of the Indian team, manager-coach, if I may put it that.
You must have spent a lot of time with Ajit Wadekar post his retirement as well, when he played for Bombay, when he was perhaps selector, and then, of course, when he became coach of the Indian team. You would have interacted with him a great deal. Did he ever talk about how Sobers was surprised when Ajit walked into the West Indies dressing room in the first test match and then invited West Indies to follow on, actually imposed the follow on the West Indies? Apparently, the lead was just over 150 runs, but not 200 as was needed in a test match situation. But because it was a 4-day game, the first day had been washed out, Ajit Wadekar walked in and said, you follow on. Has he ever talked to you about that?
Well, he spoke in jest. I mean, he said that Gary Sobers was completely surprised because I don't think Sir Garfield Sobers realized that one day being washed out means the deficit becomes lesser. As in, instead of 200, it becomes 150. I mean, the number of runs required to ask a team to follow on. So he did mention that, that Sir Garfield Sobers was very surprised at that point in time, and he could figure it out. And then somebody in the team apparently told him that, Mr. Wadekar is right, and that he should, the team should follow on. And I think that was a great psychological ploy that Ajit, used to get Gary and Rohan Kanai and all these great players, to bat again. I mean, this was a fantastic thing. I do remember, irrespective of who went, Ajit was, smiling all the way when he used to tell us how Kafil Sobers was very surprised and said, "Oh, I didn't realize that, I need to follow on. We're such a big team." He didn't realize it. And obviously, Gary Sobers being a champion cricketer and a great sportsperson or sportsman, he took it on his chin and walked out, and, the game went on.
Then, of course, Sunil Gavaskar, 774 runs, as we have been discussing. Uh, we will not talk so much about the 774 or about the number of centuries that he scored, including a century in each innings in that final test match. We will talk about how he carried the load of 774. Most players tend to crumble under the pressure of having performed really well in the first series, and then to go out and replicate that. Not very easy, but he seemed to have done really well for himself. 34 centuries when he finished, and loads of runs, the first man to get to 10,000. How did he handle the pressure of first not having been picked for the Indian team in 69 against Australia and New Zealand, and then to get on to the tour in 71 and perform so well, and then carry on from there and build perhaps one of the finest careers that we could ever hope to see?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let me go back before 71. I'm talking about the mid 60s, 65, 66, 67. He got so many runs in all forms of cricket except Ranji Trophy, which he did not play until 69 when he made his debut against Rajasthan, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Karnataka, I'm sorry. It was called Mysore in those days. V. Subramaniam was the captain. And so he kept on getting runs by the bushes, whether it was Visi Trophy, whether it was, earlier before that, whether it was the Rohinton Baria, whether it was Kuch Bihar. I mean, he was the Indian Cricketer of the Year, J.C. Mukherjee prize that he got. But I do remember, me asking his father and my maternal uncle, Manohar Gavaskar, once this question, saying that, he's getting so many runs, Dada, and I still call him that. And I said, Dada's getting so many runs. How come, Bombay, as I'm talking about, Bombay is not picking him to play? And Manohar Gavaskar learnt his cricket in the tough Maidans of Bombay of those days, said that, he's got to get more runs. And he's got to keep on getting runs if he needs to be selected. He did not, say, "Oh, no, this is politics or this is a negativity." He himself was positive. I think his father and mother, Minal Gavaskar, were great influences to Dada, and to all of us as cousins. And they used to really sort of give us this kind of motivation, no matter whether you're a cricketer or you're not a cricketer. Having said that, I think also, when he went to England and, he didn't get runs in the old test match, but he got a brilliant 50, I think it was at Manchester, which people saw, in difficult situations, when you're, playing against an attack like John Price, John Snow, whoever was bowling those days, to score those kind of runs, told people the kind of cricketer that he was. And I do remember a small incident. This happened before he, made his debut for India. And he was playing a Purushottam Shield final. He used to play for a club called Dadar Union, which also had cricketers like Dilip Sarkar later and Madhav Mantri, Naren Tamane, Subhash Gupte before Sunil played. Vasu Paranspe used to be the captain. And apparently he got a triple hundred in that game, the final. And Vijay Merchant had come, sort of to watch that match. And after Sunil got a triple hundred, he took guard again. He took his guard again. And the first ball that was bowled to him, he did a well left. And Vijay Merchant looked at his uncle, that is Sunil Gavaskar's uncle, his mama, maternal uncle Madhav Mantri, and he said, "George," I said, "this is something I've never seen. I mean, he scored 300. He's seeing the ball as big as a football, and he left the ball." And I remember many years later, somebody had asked Vijay Bhai, what was the difference? Why did he, put all his monies on that little horse, 5 foot 4.5 inches or 5 inches? If he's hearing this, he's going to kill me. I don't know your exact height, Dada. I'm sorry. I know I'm taller than you slightly. But, and he said that I've never seen a batsman, leave the ball as much as this young man is doing. And this is exactly what he did when he played for the combined universities against the New Zealand team in 69 when the New Zealanders came. So we knew how he maintained his self is, I think, discipline. As we all know, he was one of those, he had fun. He knew, how to enjoy himself, but he knew what to do and what not to do. This is exactly what cricketers like, later on, Sachin Tendulkar ended up doing, or today Virat Kohli is doing. He's so disciplined, in his approach. It's not just batting. It's also off the field, keeping hours, eating exactly, what is needed, what is not, shunning all the stuff which was not good for your health or not good for cricket. In those days, we didn't have dietitians. They didn't have dietitians. So Sunil actually, sort of was one of the first guys whom, from an Indian perspective, was so disciplined. And if you consider what used to happen slightly before that, when Tiger used to lead, and there were fantastic cricketers like ML Jaisima, Salim Durrani, a lot of others, they really had fun. I think Sunil somewhere down the line realized that he, was a lambi race ka ghoda.
That's brilliant. There were two other Bombay cricketers who made a very strong impression. We can talk about Ajit Wadekar's captaincy in just a bit,
Yeah.
But I think in that 774 somewhere, what Sardesai and Solkar did on that tour, saving India on a couple of occasions, more than a couple of occasions with partnership, crucial partnership, tends to get forgotten. Just talk me through a little bit about what Dilip Sardesai and Eknath Solkar would have ever told you about that tour of 71.
Well, actually, it was Eknath, who used to practice with us at the Hindu Gymkhana. Even though he was a test cricketer, he was so humble and so down to earth, as everybody knows. Eki used to come and practice with us schoolboys, and it was such a big thing for us to see an Eknath Solkar coming and bowling to us, or a Farooq engineer coming and, sort of batting with us. It was amazing. But I do remember Eknath mentioning that when he walked out to bat, when the Indian team situation in the first test, when they were 5 or 6 wickets down for 60 or 70, I don't remember the exact, as you said, we are not numbers persons. He told Eknath, he said, Eki, just consider this a club game. They used to both play for the same club in Bombay, which was the PJ Hindu Gymkhana. So he said, treat this like a club game. And he actually ended up saying, oh, these are not the West Indians I remember of 62. Because he was one of those who had toured West Indies earlier. Wadekar, I don't think had toured West Indies earlier. And yeah. I think it was only Salim Durrani and maybe, exactly, only Salim Durrani and maybe Jaisima, I'm not sure. Yeah. And Dilip Sardesai have toured. He said, those guys were much more quicker. What are these people? And Dilip, we used to call him Sadi Uncle, and I'll continue calling him that because it's, it's a default in my mouth. Sadi Uncle looked at these young boys like G Rajaraman, Sunil Gavaskar, Eknath Solkar. Hey, ordinary man. What? Play them. No big deal. Dekho, kuch nahi hota. So, this is the kind of motivation he gave those young people, whether it was a Sunil Gavaskar, whether it was an Ashok Mankad, whether it was an Eknath Solkar, whether it was a Gundappa Vishwanath. He gave them that kind of motivation. Sunil Gavaskar has mentioned in his book, Sunny Days, Sunil had yet to play a test match. He was standing in, in the customs, and the custom officer asked Sunil, Dilip Sardesai, anything to declare? And he said, I've got a bag full of runs to declare. And he looked at Sunil and pointed at Sunil standing behind him and says, he good, he will take you. He scored lots of runs. And this for Sunil, who had not played a test match, must have been an outstanding, piece of motivation or inspiration or whatever, So that was what good old Sadi Uncle was all about. And Eknath being Eknath in the typical, as everybody says, Khadus, Mumbai, whatever, he just hung in there. He played with Dilip Sardesai. He knew that he had to, because see, Bombay cricket has always told you one thing. People in Bombay travel from all over the place, a lot of problems even now. Catching a bus, train, carrying your heavy kit bag. In those days, we used to have these small bags. And even before me, I doubt if they had even those bags. So when you go on the wicket, you're not going to give your wicket easily. You're going to go back and your parents are going to ask you, kya kiya was? How many runs have you scored? Or how many wickets have you taken? You've not traveled 2.5 hours up and down to score a blob and come back. So Eknath obviously, sort of was an amazing thing. And Eknath, as everybody knows, his earlier days was one of the most highly rated cricketers. And he, to me, I don't think the Indian cricket firmament really gave him the kind of due that he deserved, as a cricketer. He's a fantastic all-rounder. He never said no. I mean, okay, people say, oh, Eknath Solkar was not quick. Dude, how many people have got Jeff Boycott out that many times? Or a Brian Luckhurst out, or anybody for that matter. Look at his analysis. He always got the difficult guys out. He and Abid Ali, they served Indian cricket a lot. Yeah, they may be military medium or even smaller than that. All these people talk about, these, what's the right word, speedometers. Dude, he knew exactly where to go to get to Sir Jeffrey Boycott. And to me, I think it's end of the topic as far as Eknath is concerned.
We'll get back to Ajit Wadekar. You mentioned that people had dismissed him as a lucky captain. I don't think anybody can be branded that because they make their own luck. And if I remember right, there was a time in that second test match when the spin trio, Bishan Bedi, Venkat Raghavan and Prasanna were not able to get wickets. And then Ajit Wadekar turned to Salim Durrani. And if I remember right, he got the great Garfield Sobers out and then Clive Lloyd. Two of the most dangerous batsmen in the side. Of course, Rohan Kanai was the third. But two of the most dangerous batsmen, Salim Durrani, got them out. You don't need, you have to make your own luck to be able to think on your feet and use somebody who had not bowled for India for a long, long time.
See, I mean, anybody who has had the good fortune of watching Salim Durrani, and some of us, like I played office and club cricket for the same team, Century Rayon, many years ago, and he was our captain. So we learned a lot from Salim Bhai. And story goes, and this is something I actually have checked with both Salim Bhai and Ajit Wadekar sir. And they both said the same story in different ways. Mr. Wadekar sir told us that, he wanted somebody to bang the ball in. And considering Salim Bhai was such a tall man, he probably was in a better position to bang the ball because he didn't want the spinners to flight the ball. He wanted somebody to bang the ball in. And don't forget that both the batsmen he got were left-handers, were not right-handers. Typically, like a left-hander bowling to a left-hander as compared to a left-hander bowling to a right-hander. Getting, Gary Sobers, the great Gary Sobers out for a duck, and then immediately getting Clive Lloyd caught, for a couple of runs, just a couple of runs after that. Salim Bhai did exactly what Ajit Wadekar asked him to do. Those two balls just turned the game around. Of course, it was, you cannot take anything away from Srinivas Venkatraghavan, his 5-wicket haul in the second innings. No way. Nobody talks about Venki, sir. It's really sad. I'm sorry to say. But Salim Bhai, at that point in time, opened the gates, for India to make those, to march forward. And I think those two balls, even today, people still keep on talking about it. And Salim Bhai, being a humble man that he is, God bless him, he always says, ke, "Arey, wo kuch nahi, wo Jitya bola." I used to call him Jitya in Hindi, if I may use Hindi. He said, "Jitya ne kidu," in Gujarati. "Jitya ne kidu. Arey, Salim, jara maar, ball ne maar." As in, hit the ball. And that's what I did. And I got wickets. He made it so simple. Getting Gary Sobers and climbed out. To whom are you? And they got out. Simple as that. Obviously, it wasn't simple. There was a lot of thought and planning that had probably gone behind, those two wickets.
Also, even though Ajit took over from Mansoor Ali Khan Pataudi for that tour, casting vote from Vijay Merchant for the position, the fielding on that tour, you had Ajit Wadekar himself at flip, Venkatraghavan was a fine gully fielder, you had Eknath Solkar at forward short leg and Abid Ali at backward short leg. So this whole close-in catching thing, I don't think Ajit Wadekar has got credit for getting this together, even though the Nawab of Pataudi did set very high standard and placed a lot of emphasis on fielding. I think close-in catching really came good under Ajit Wadekar, didn't it?
Absolutely,
the spin trio always benefited from having such an excellent close-in bottom.
Absolutely. Very honestly, if Tiger obviously instilled, Tiger Pataudi instilled that sense of fielding, how important fielding is in modern cricket. I'm talking about 65, 62, 63 when he, took over unfortunately from Murray Contractor, who was injured in the West Indies, and then carried on from that until 71. So he instilled that whole sense of fielding. Before these names that you took just now, there used to be Rusi Surti, for example, also used to play for India. Brilliant all-rounder, left arm, medium pacer, spinner, very much like Eknath, and a very gritty batsman. So this whole fielding concept of fielding was obviously instilled by Tiger. And I think they both led by example, if I may put it that way. You being a Hyderabadi, heard of many stories about how Tiger's brilliant throw from cover point used to almost break the wicketkeeper's nose. As you heard those stories, and we've also heard them. And as a child, I've seen him do that in Bombay when he used to play, either for Hyderabad or more often for Dilip Trophy for South Zone. Ajit was a brilliant slip catcher. So if Tiger, sort of instilled that whole thing about outfield fielding, in the sense throwing and all that, I'm not saying he did not instill anything close in. Ajit instilled that whole close in kind of slip. So he, sort of turned Sunil into a outstanding slip fielder, turned Vishy, sort of a lot of inspiration were given to Sunil Gavaskar, and to obviously Sunil and Vishy worked for it. Vishwanath worked for it. Not that it was only Wadekar who gave it to them, but they worked for it. And he instilled that kind of, a regimen into these fielders. So then you had Abid, who's taken some outstanding catch. People talk about Eki all the time. People never talk about Abid and the brilliant quicksilver catching that Abid had done. I remember the game against Tony Lewis's team at Brabant Stadium when, there was a guy called Graham, Graham Roop, the guy with the afro hair. He flicked Chandra and, and people were looking at the square leg position when suddenly you saw the ball in Abid Ali's hand standing at forward short leg. that kind of magic. I mean, obviously, it was obviously the influence of Ajit Wadekar, and of course, and before that, Tiger Pataudi, who gave them that, and which was brilliant as far as the Indian spin quartet was concerned. I just wish there was, what shall I say, the DRS in those days. Had DRS has been there, Krishan Singh Bedi, the greats, Krishan Singh Bedi, Irapalli Prasanna, Bhagwat Chandrasekhar, and Srinivas Venkatraghavana would have had many, many more wickets, trust me.
That's wonderful. Let me take you back again to the West Indies. There was some difficult time for the Indian team, but I think overall it batted really well. Managed more than 300 runs on several occasions. Sunil Gavaskar, of course, batting brilliantly throughout the series. I don't think he had any failures at all. He started his Test career with 2 half centuries in that match that India won, remained not out at the end of that Test match when India won by 7 wickets in Port of Spain. So I think there was some kind of unsettling things that happened later. Maybe there was some changes in the side. For example, ML Jaisima was dropped after the West Indies tour, and Abbas Ali Beg came in. Abbas Ali Beg hadn't played for India for a long time. So there was some upheaval within the side. Obviously, Chandra coming back on that tour of 71 to England, he hadn't gone to the West Indies, but Chandra coming back seemed to be a masterstroke that really worked, especially when you consider what happened at the Oval.
And you had a Farokh engineer coming back, who did not play in the West Indies due to some contractual problems, and there was some problem with the BCCI in those days. And then I don't think anybody really spoke about it. And I think one of the reasons why they didn't speak about it is because India won and came back. I mean, typically the Indian media, even then, I mean, were the kind who would probably write about all this had India failed, and had India failed, I mean, which they did not, and beating. See, at the end of the day, if people believe, the people of those days believed that 71 beating West Indies because Gary Sobers was on his way down, whatever that means. He got hundreds, he got wickets, so he was not really on his way down. Or a Rohan Kanai not being the old Rohan Kanai. Don't forget that Ray Illingworth, who is even today, as of 2020, rated by Sunil Gavaskar as the best captain he's ever seen. I mean, he's gone on record very recently to say, when he was asked this question, who was the best captain you've seen or played against or who with, he said Ray Illingworth without a doubt. So Ray Illingworth leading the team with an attack like John Snow, John Price, Derek Underwood, Norman Gifford, Norman Gifford, and having batsmen like Luckhurst, having, Jeffrey Boycott, Fletcher. And, I mean, see, beating them. And don't forget what had happened before the tour. And England had beaten Australia in Australia, correct? And they beat the West Indies in England. They'd beaten New Zealand. So they'd beaten the top teams in the world at that point in time, and also beaten Pakistan just before the Indian tour. And Pakistan they were not green-ons. They had a lot of people in the Pakistan team those days who were playing county cricket. We're talking about Zahir Abbas, we're talking about Mushtaq Mohammed, we're talking about Intikhab Alam, Asif Iqbal. They had beaten them. So beating England in England, what shall I say, another stamp, like to that team. I mean, I'm not talking Ajit Wadekar or X, Y, Z. To the team for having sort of, done exactly what, people said, that, the first one was a flash in the pan or whatever. He just proved it. I don't think anybody ever discussed this whole why was Abbas Ali Beg Saab was picked, or why did Farokh Engineer not, why was the rule not applicable for Farokh Engineer, which is what in the West Indies. I think we win and people forget. When you lose, even when there's no problem, they create problems. I mean, even today, I believe that there were a lot of problems in the 1983 World Cup team. And let's be honest, nobody's going to talk about it. Nobody talks about it because India won. And we are all happy that India won, and we are all happy that everybody hugged together and kissed and made up or whatever. So people always talk. The journalists, especially the media, if I may put it, I'm part of it, tend to sort of make up the whole. Rather, tend to, obviously it's a news story thing, and that's another topic we can discuss some other day. But had India lost that series, there would have been all these questions asked. Why was a Beg picked? Why was Jayantilal not given a chance? Etc., etc., etc. Which they did in '74, by the way. So that's how it works.
On that tour of 71 England, look at the bowling composition. Obviously, Abid Ali and Solkar opened the attack. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Wadekar himself bowled a couple of overs with the new ball, or was it
Gavaskar bowled? I remember Gavaskar bowled
with the new ball.
Sunil, sorry.
Correct. And then you had Chandra, obviously a key weapon in the Indian bowling armory, and bowling well and picking up wickets and helping India win that Oval Test match. He was an automatic choice, as was Bishan Singh Bedi as the only left-arm spinner available. Salim Durrani had been dropped off, obviously, from the tour of 71 to England. But when it came to the off-spinners, Ajit Wadekar seemed to prefer his vice-captain, Venkat Raghavan, over someone like Erapalli Prasanna. It must have been one of the most difficult decisions for Ajit Wadekar to take, leaving out Erapalli Prasanna from the squad.
Don't also forget that Ajit, though made his debut in '66 for India, which is after both Venkat Raghavan, Chandrasekhar, and Prasanna, was actually part of the Indian team much before. So he was always in the 15 from 58, 59 till he eventually played for India against Clive Lloyd, Gary Sober's team, in which he and Clive Lloyd both made their debuts at the Brabant Stadium. So he knew what Prasanna could offer and what Venkat Raghavan could offer. I mean, very honestly. And being a left-hander, he played both of them for Bombay against, say, Madras in those days, what used to be called, or Mysore in those days, or South Zone. So he knew both the bowlers. And I don't think Ajit was the kind who would ever sort of, detract from, miss away or go away from the fact of winning a match. So he knew whom to bowl at what time and when. And I'm a great fan of Prassi sir, big fan of Prassi sir, right from my childhood. And of course, Venkat Raghavan sir too, but Prassi was always the hero for all of us. And we used to always wonder. But when you're looking back, when you look in a very mature way, you realize that Ajit will not take a decision until he knew, what he was doing, very honestly. And in a lot of games, if you remember, even in the West Indies, he bowled both of them in tandem.
But obviously, both those tours have been huge milestones, terrific landmarks in Indian cricket. Now, with the advent of T20 cricket, with the advent of one-day cricket, just before that, everyone looks at 1983 World Cup, everyone looks at the 2015 World Cup and the 2007 World 2020 and says that this is what has made Indian cricket what it is. But I really think that it was the 71 tours, the twin tours of the West Indies and England, both difficult tours, not easy tours at all, both difficult tours, both played against opposition which had wonderful captains in Sir Gary Sobers and Illingworth. Both tough customers and not people who give up easily. For India to win, I think it was a huge turning point in Indian cricket history. Like I said, even though in 1967, India had beaten New Zealand in New Zealand for India's first overseas win, it really was 1971 that made the difference to Indian cricket. I think it instilled a lot of self-belief in the Indians that they could go out there and play against the best.
Absolutely. I mean, you look back and you say for us, growing up, what was probably what 1983 meant to the generation of a Sachin Tendulkar, if I may put it that way, or meant to other boys who were sort of growing up. I'm sure the generation of the Dilip Sarkars, my batch, whom I played with, club cricket and office cricket with, Ravi Shastri, Sandeep Patil. I'm talking about the Bombay guys because that's where I played most of my cricket. And I'm sure if you go into other states like Hyderabad, Chennai, which was Madras in those days, or Bangalore, or Calcutta, or Delhi, you will realize that a lot of these youngsters of the day, looked at 71 and said, "Oh, we can beat West Indies in West Indies," which had never ever happened before in a Test match. I'm saying we can beat England in England, which had never ever happened again in a Test match. So we had beaten England in India under Nari Contractor, if I'm not mistaken. And Tiger obviously had done a fantastic job, taking India to victory in New Zealand. But beating West Indies, led by Gary Sobers, was brilliant. Beating England in England, led by Ray Illingworth. I think it instilled a lot of, what shall I say? And obviously, memories. Nowadays, I don't think coaches of today, discuss past with the cricketers. Their past is an immediate past. So their past probably 10 years down the line, what the way that the youngsters probably look at the cricketers who played at my time will probably look at people like Sachin Tendulkar after 10 years. They will not really realize the kind of value that Sachin or before that Chandrasekhar, for example, or Erapalli Prasanna, Bishan Singh Bedi, and the batsmen like Sunil Gavaskar, G R Vishwanath, Mohinder Amarnath, Dilip Sarkar, all these people have added, to Indian cricket. So it's that's how it is, unfortunately. But certainly, 71 was, in my opinion, was when Indian cricket just burst out of its seams, and I don't think we've ever looked back after that.
71, it was Ganesh Chaturthi when India beat England. I remember
Yes.
as a 10-year-old kid, we had tuned into BBC and or was it All India Radio, and we were listening to commentary. Uh, Father being a sports journalist in Hyderabad was a huge advantage. So the radio was on, and we were all thrilled that India had beaten England in England. I don't remember listening to commentary for the tour of for the tour of the West Indies, but it was Ganesh festival in Hyderabad, and there was celebrations on. But not many days after that, uh, I had one of my most memorable moments in my career, either watching or writing about cricket. I could get a picture with Sunil Gavaskar. My brothers Balu and Venkat joined me. My mother was there as well. I remember statements, cricket writer Ramu Salivati. He had come down to cover the Moinatala Gold Cup, and Sunil Gavaskar was playing for ACC. Wonderful team that it was. He'd just gotten out. There was lunch, and after lunch, we were able to kind of buttonhole him for this wonderful picture with Sunil Gavaskar. What are your own memories immediately after that 1971 tour?
Both the tours. I mean, this is very personal. I mean, this is something which is amazing because, my maternal grandfather and his paternal grandfather, Keshav Sabaji Gavaskar, used to live in Vengurla, which is a small little hamlet, which is on the Maharashtra-Goa border. It's in Maharashtra. And the whole family went to, went to Vengurla because Sunil was coming, the family was coming. And, he was going to come to pay his respects to his grandfather who used to live in the village. And so he came there. And I remember Dayanand Bandodkar, that time the chief minister of Goa, had organized a small little felicitation for Sunil Gavaskar, where the in Mapsa, there's a small little city called Mapsa in Goa. And at the Mapsa ST stand, it's still very much there. And I remember they had erected a stage and Sunil was felicitated and all of us family members were like, wow, all that. So it was amazing. Also, don't forget that was the generation, 71 was the generation of Rajesh Khanna. And there were a lot of similarities between the cricketing superstar and, Rajesh Khanna, whom all of us adored in those days, the hairstyles, the goggles, So, that whole was, when you look back and whatever you remember, suddenly, somebody who used to walk every day in the road suddenly became such a big celebrity, and the way that Dada handled it was amazing. I mean, there was no, what shall I say? I mean, he to date remains the same. Like you message him, he replies. You send him an email, he replies. You write him a letter, he replies. The biggest regret or the biggest sad part that I have, and I'll find it, is I have a lot of letters that he wrote to me from the West Indies in 71 and 70, both, and England as well. And he actually, I'd given him an autograph book. And that autograph book was full of every cricketer that played against India. This is including the Jamaicans team, the Barbados team, the Leeward Islands team, and the Test cricketers. And he actually got it and gave it to me. It was amazing. So personally, as a family member, and I speak as a part of the family, it was amazing thought. And we all looked up to him because he never ever forgot his old friends. Never, to date, he hasn't. And I don't think he ever will. And this is a great example for people, looking back, the celebritydom, if handled well, you end up being exactly what he is today, and he, right till the last innings of his in Test cricket and in first class cricket, and I'm referring to that, the MCC versus rest of the world, which happened at Lords, where he scored this, brilliant 180-odd 100 against, probably the best attack in the world at that point in time, at the greatest venue, which people say Lords. So I think that was something which we can never forget. I mean, I don't think it ever stopped. The celebrations just continued.
There was also a dinner that I remember you mentioning him coming with a very dear friend of ours to a dinner. Would you want to share that?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. I don't think Dada even remembers that. I mean, I don't know if he remembers, but I remember the eldest, my mother's and Sunil's father's eldest brother, Sashikant Gavaskar, crazy cricket fan, and he sort of invited Sunil and all of us, for dinner at his place, which happened to be, I think, a weekend, Saturday or a Sunday. And Sunil walked in with a gentleman called Rajan Bala, who was the only journalist in India at that point in time, had written a negative story about India beating the West Indies in West Indies. And he had said, oh, it's a, okay team, and Gary Sober's, and this is what I remember. I mean, people told me, and I read that I read that article. It was not for the Statesman where it worked. It was for another publication. I don't remember which one. And he'd written the story, and Sunil walked in with Rajan Bala, and none of us knew. And it was amazing. You see, the point I'm trying to make is that whatever that happened between journalists and cricketers, sports persons of those days remained in that domain. I don't think their personal equations ever changed. And I remember Rajan coming in, sitting next to Kantu Mama, as we called him. Sashikant Gavaskar was called Kantu Mama, and Sunil called him Kantu Kaka, and discussing cricket. It was such a beautiful evening. Of course, I didn't understand a word what was going on. I was too young to understand. But I do remember that. And then I met Rajan after many years, as a cricketer when I was playing in Bombay, and he came to cover one of our matches. I used to play for Tatas and the CCI. And I asked Rajan, I said, do you remember me? He said, you look familiar. So I said, do you remember that day? He said, yes, I do. So I don't think my memory was wrong. So that was, it was amazing to see somebody like a Sunil, or even for that matter, an Ajit Wadekar, whom he had in a way sort of, criticized, saying that, no big deal beating West Indies, etc. Being great friends with him till Rajan was alive and till he was in Bombay. Amazing story.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dada. It's always wonderful to go on that memory lane, go down the memory lane with you. You are a bundle of stories. Always wonderful to hear you narrate some of those stories. Obviously, we are not covering the whole gamut of the tour. We are not looking at the nuances, but little anecdotes that come from you, little stories that we can put together. I'm sure anybody who watches us now will enjoy what you have shared with us. Thank you so much, Dada.
You're welcome, and I look forward to many, many more. Take care. Bye-bye.
We shall. Take care. And stay safe.
Cheers.